we have our vector logo, but we need to do a few things to clean it up. As I mentioned earlier, you can sort of see how the logo starts to break up, and it doesn't have a smooth curve. It has some kind of steps being included into it. There's also a bunch of some miscellaneous shapes that when we tested the extrude had some issues. So the first thing that we want to do is we probably want to make this a little bit bigger. When Illustrator shapes come in, they come in a little small, so I'm just going to boost this up and make the logo a little bit larger. And I'm doing that from the spline mode and scaling it up as a spline shape and not scaling the object. This makes it easier because then we don't have to reset the scale information. So now, with the logo scaled up, I'm going to address the resolution of the spline, the interpolation of the spline. So under interpolation, I want to change this to adaptive. And you can see once we click over to adaptive, it's going to start to put in more steps to smooth that over. The next thing that I want to do is I want to actually clean up these lines. These shapes in here are creating some really weird, funky stuff. So we need to sort of address that. And so if I go in here and start to sort of clean up and remove some of these shapes, oops, don't want that one. I want to delete that. So I'm just going to get rid of some of these shapes that came in. Now when I do that, you'll notice that these shapes don't go all the way through past the shape in there. So what I want to do is I just want to make sure that when I do this, I take these and maybe just slide them over a little bit, just so that they'll go behind this this other shape. Now once I've got that accomplished, I'm just removing, hit the G key and the J key to remove some of the display elements, clean up my viewport. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and break these apart. Now you break these apart based on how you need to animate these individually. So for right now, let me break it into 4 different elements. We can break it down further afterwards if we decide that we need to break the lettering apart. But initially I'm going to take these shapes. So I want to break these out as a shape. So in here there's a detach. I wonder if there's one. There's a detached segment. I don't know if that's kind of weird. There's an attach and a detach. Not sure that's what I wanted, but detach, and it should set up us with an option to give it a name. So it's best to maybe these will be all logo elements, and this will be the outer ring. And then we'll do this piece of line, and we'll detach that as the logo line block. And then I'll go ahead and select all of these spline elements and detach those as logo text Baker. And then what I've got left is this, so I'll just rename logo text college. So now I need to start to model these elements and give them some dimension. So the easiest one to start with maybe was, let's start with this block. And for this I think I'm just going to do a simple extrude. We'll go ahead and go to extrude. And this is where we can determine how thick we want to make it. That's probably pretty good. Now your amount will differ based on the size of the object. Again, that's one of the reasons why I scaled it up, is because I didn't want these to be really infinitesimally small. I wanted the numbers to be a little bit larger so that I didn't have all these decimal places in the extrude amounts. So now let's go ahead and work on this outer ring. For the outer ring, I'm going to do a little something different. I actually want to have the edge to be slightly rounded. So I'm going to use a bevel profile, bevel profile modifier. Now, to use this profile to actually give it some thickness, I need to give it a shape. So if I were to go ahead and create a circular shape, or just for kicks, a rectangular shape, I can feed that into the bevel profile. So let's go ahead and pick the rectangular shape, and you'll notice that it gave it some thickness. It causes a slight issue because of the shape, the edges on this. It's having a little trouble with that, but that could be adjusted in this parameters of this. And if we were to round out the corners of that, you'll notice that we'll start to get some rounded shapes on the edges. Let's go ahead and try using the circular shape. And generally you cut it in half. You delete half of the shape on the splines when you're using the bevel profile. Maybe that's what it's having a problem with. I just convert that to an editable spline and delete out some of the segments. Yeah, that's what it was. It was just having a hard time because it was a closed shape. And really what you want is you want something like this. You'll notice how it's inverted. It's easy enough to fix that with in here there's a mirror function. So if we set that and we just mirror it, you can see that kind of fixes it up. Now I was going to do something similar with this circular shape, and if I convert that to a editable spline, delete half. I'm going to delete this half because I know it needs to go this way to be proper. Let's just switch and use this. So now it's a little bit more rounded. You can see how there's half the circle on the shape. And if you don't want it to be as thick, the height of that is based on the points. So if I were to make these a little bit scaled in, or I could just select both of those, say scale, I could scale those together. There we go. We'll get the scale it together, and now I'm affecting the thickness. So you can sort of see how you have control over it based on this shape. I was kind of digging on what I had earlier, so maybe I'll change my mind and decide that I want to pick this kind of profile. Now the one issue that I had with it starts to get a little thick to the lettering. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to shrink the spline in here to make it a little bit thinner. So I'm going to go back to this spline, and I'm going to go ahead and use outline and just make it a little bit thinner on the inside. Just about the thickness of that shape. So I've got it outlined in both of those pieces. I normally don't want to mess with a person's logo because they've got things measured just right, but in this case I need to shrink it a little bit just to make it fit with the bevel. So now I've just got I deleted the exterior splines of that, so that when I go back it should look pretty good, except for that right there. It's because it didn't like. Yeah, you can see how it's a little it's not too happy right there. See how things overlap? It's usually going to cause a problem. So that's where you've just gotta tweak it. And I'm just going to change it to a smooth type just to make it happy. Take a look at the Bezier handles. Just see what you can do to make it happy. So that by adjusting that, fixing the overlap, now it should be a little cleaner shape. Okay, so now we've got the exterior with a slight kind of beveled edge. Let's see if we can do something with the text logo. Let's do just a bevel modifier. And typically what I do is I go ahead and take a look at it kind of in a perspective view just to see how thick it's really getting. And you'll set your height to get the initial height to be about where you want it. And because I've used it before, it had a nice setting of, for me it was a nice 2.5 that I thought was pretty good as an initial extrude. But remember, it's still flat. We kind of want a little bit of detail on the sides in here to catch a little bit of edge. So what this does is it lets us extrude it, but also lets us do a scale. So if we do a second level of this and we extrude it up and then set a height with a negative value, we can get a nice looking kind of beveled edge. So you can sort of see we've got a really nice kind of beveled edge. And this works really well for very blocky type. If it gets very scripty and it gets really thin, this is really hard to do. And you might want to avoid doing that. And when you go too far, it'll start to get nasty. So if we do something like that, what we can do is we can copy this style over to our other text. And now we've got some nice finished text. Last thing is we just need to correct some of the depth. So right now this element is up on top, and I'd kind of like it to sit below. And we'll need to center the pivots here. We'll just center that, and I'll move that maybe to just somewhere in there like that. And then I can decide how tall I want some of these things to sit. So maybe I'll have this logo kind of sit more inside, and maybe have the college kind of stick out. I kind of like that. Okay, so now we've got our logo built. The next phase will be to add some animation to this.